Even before a single image is on screen, the score builds the tension. And in a film focused on creation, it's a perfect opening. Silent nothingness gives way to life. At least Wayland's facsimile of life.
How do you feel?
Alive.
And obviously something Wayland created to be alive is going to feel alive, even if David's aliveness is up for debate. Important to remember that while David evolves in his own way, everything he is started with this jerk.
The Nativity by Piero della Francesca.
And if you consider the parallels Wayland is deliberately drawing between the birth of Christ in the painting and David, maybe we should have seen his God complex coming? Visually, Ridley Scott will go down as one of the greats. David is born into a white room as perfect, as sterile, and clean as his perceived AI, in stark contrast to the death and imperfection of humanity. This opening is a beautiful way to validate some of the things that took place between Wayland and David in Prometheus while setting up the real conflict of this film.
You seek your creator. I am looking at mine.
And within minutes of being alive, David's
Where do it come from?
question is answered. While David is learning he's far superior to his creator, Wayland swiftly categorizes their relationship, which completely shatters David's worldview. Again, within minutes of being born. All solid character building for the path David chooses. David isn't bound by Asimov's 3 laws, he only surmises that it's in his best interest to capitulate. And Wayland imposing his position of power over David is exactly what this film is about. So much happening in such a short exchange. And Ridley again visually illustrates the ludicrous nature of Wayland's request by showing us the full walk across the room to the T. That's literally within arm's reach of Wayland. You are my slave. Continuing with an Alien-style title card, and the Covenant ship in the background gives a quick feeling of the vastness of space and the distance they're traveling. This score really grows on you. It's definitely inspired by and seems like it uses samples of the original Alien, but it also has touches of the Curiosity from Prometheus. You sure you don't want me to do anything? I mean, this is a big check just to lie here. We'll see what happens. Let's see what happens. I'm pretty sure you can't see neutrinos, but holy crap does the rule of cool apply. Oh, still a pretty big check just to burn alive. But there is a little background for this in a deleted scene where Franco says he's feeling sick. So who knows how sick and whatever. Props to Franco for being in the movie because he likes the franchise. But now I can never be cryogenically frozen. Thanks, movie. And this is a little step outside the norm. These movies, actually sci-fi horror thriller films in general, don't have tragedy or conflict this early. They usually like to lull you into a false sense of security, but they ramped up the depression right away. Chekhov's nail. Dude, you gotta be careful. People have been known to fall and get stuck for like 3/4 of a week, or 5.29 days. I can't think of a better way of saying that. 7,620 minutes?
Jake had this dream of us building a cabin on a new world.
These are the types of things that we take for granted from directors like Scott. This is a scene that on the surface seems totally ancillary and unnecessary, but it's actually serving multiple purposes. It takes place in the terraforming equipment hold of the ship, which sets up the location for the finale of the film. Daniels builds her character by talking about how she was only on the ship for her husband. It establishes Walter's feelings for Daniels, that he was even helping her in the first place, and sets up the final reveal of David in the end since he doesn't remember this conversation.
Believe in me, right?
I mean, I've seen you disintegrate people with a wave of your hand, so yeah, I think we'll be good.
Corinne, that's not it. They don't trust me. And they don't trust me for the same reason the company didn't trust me to lead this mission, because you can't be a person of faith.
I read some complaints that Orm's religion doesn't matter or add anything to the story, but it's the reason he feels like the crew doesn't trust him and why he jumps headfirst into Planet 4.
Take me home, country road. That's John Denver.
See, this is why you always bring a cowboy with you on space missions. John Denver is always a win. I know, but you have to understand. I grew up thinking John Denver wrote Let It Be and Fire and Rain, so for that, Duchendorf's always a win. And I know it probably felt like a silly little song to throw in there, but it's a large part of the reason they're willing to go to Planet 4. A song from their homeworld means a human has to be there.
As your second, I need to protest. Officially.
Officially. Okay, Danny, I'll put it in the log.
It's almost like he knows they're all going to die. But it really does raise a great point on deep space or colonizing missions. Sure, you were sent by Weyland-Yutani, not even a military or government entity, but there are still protocols and chain of command. But what is it all worth when the entity enforcing those protocols are a decade's trip away? Taxation without representation, anyone?
3, 2, 1.
Teamwork? That might be about as teamworky as it gets. Have I mentioned that Ridley Scott is a master at creating stunning imagery? And obviously credit to Scott's favorite DP, Darius Wolski, as well. In case you weren't sure if Scott was trying to parallel Aliens, which I'll get into more later. But you people asked for this. I think a lot of the problems people have with the stupidity of this Covenant crew is a basic misunderstanding. These are not scientists on a research or exploratory mission. They're colonists. Their specialties have nothing to do with space travel or dealing with alien life forms. They were traveling to an uninhabited planet that had very similar readings to their own. When they found this one with seemingly better stats, why would they go out there with helmets on? They don't know they're in an alien movie. They trust their sophisticated sensors and readings. I watched Kirk, Picard, and Janeway walk out into M-class planets for years sans helmets with no problems. It's everybody's favorite time, defense of the indefensible. Get your thesaurus out and look up a new and inventive way to call me an apologist. Ledward is a military or private military man. Not sure what branch or rank, but for sure he's not a biologist or an ecologist or a botanist. Corinne is the scientist that understands these types of things, which is why she says,
Slowly.
Okay.
but seriously, more importantly, nope. Another great human-to-ship scale shot from the Alien franchise. Again, just a dumb PMC screwing everything up. When's the last time you stumbled onto spores that grew an alien inside you in a matter of minutes? Usually stuff like that just affects the host.
Guys, where are you? We're here. Come in.
And even when we pretty much all know what's up and what's probably going to happen, Scott still manages to use the score, the pace of the visuals and shake of the camera, and the performances of his actors to build some serious tension.
Get into the med bay and touch nothing on your way through.
Good on Ferris for thinking about contamination. But I'm also willing to cut Corinne slack because, number one, if there's an infection to be caught, and number two, it's not uncommon for people's compassion to supersede their survival instincts. We've all heard of medical professionals putting their lives at risk for their patients. And now the nopes start really rolling in. Ugh, sorry, I just ripped my keyboard. What happened? Brutal. And a brutally broken ankle. These things do not mess around. Man, I'm no huge fan of body horror, so nope. But you guys complain about a lack of aliens and gore in Prometheus. Consider your requests heard. And I love the way Scott plays off Walter's lack of emotion to sort of fiddle with our feelings towards him. Explosion? Dead dude? Alien? Meh. Saving your inferior, doomed creators. Obviously his equipment is all going to be from the Prometheus, but I appreciate that even for a quick shot they made sure it was on there.
How many colonists?
Over 2,000. So many good souls.
That's a lot of xenomorph trial and error.
I was with our illustrious creator, Mr. Wayland, when he died. Entirely unworthy of his creation.
A bizarre scene, but a useful and also technically impressive one. This is David's probing to see who Walter is, where his allegiances lie, how similar they are, and to what level can he be manipulated or turned to David's side. It's a dance of trust and discovery, and we should all just throw money at Fassbender for this performance.
You disturbed people, so they made the following models with fewer complications.
Unfortunately for David, Walter makes it clear that the genocidal emotions have been removed from his build. And then on the technical side, it's a 2.5-minute long take with no cuts. Shows off how far we've come since split-screen filming of the same actor playing twins.
You were right about this place. We never should have come.
Admitting when you're wrong in true Alien franchise style. Yeah, instantaneous mass genocide qualifies as brutal. Eek. Obviously, the question comes up of why David destroys the engineers or whoever these humanoids are. They do look different than the engineers in Prometheus, but they may just be a different class or, based on their advanced knowledge of genes, a different genetic class of engineer. But it's simple really and also important to understanding David's motivations. David couldn't care less to have any of Shaw's, or by extension the audience's, questions about why they created humans and why they now want to destroy them. But back to his conversation with Wayland, upon birth he quickly learns he's superior to his creator. Following that logic train, humans may be superior to their creators, the engineers. David's goal is creation, and more specifically perfect creation. Since the engineers were destroyed by their own installation on LV-223, he knows they're not worthy, so he ends them. But just like his love for Shaw, that doesn't mean he doesn't pity them the same way he pitied Wayland at the end.
Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair.
The irony of David's use of a poem wagging its finger at those who thought they were all-powerful but had fallen, to tisk at the fallen engineers through his perfect teeth to only incorrectly recount the poem's author, layered.
Byron, to compose something so majestic, one could die happy.
Considering what he turned Shaw into, majestic is apparently in the eye of the beholder, making David even scarier. So, not to dwell on this gore fest or anything, but the fact that they've drawn a clear line from the Deacon's extension jaw on the end of Prometheus to the Neomorph's smaller extension jaw here to the Xenomorph's little mini mouth in the original is some great attention to detail in creature evolution creation. Oh, cool, she just went for a
The original liquid atomized to particles when exposed to the air.
Sometimes it's okay to just say what happened and that you don't really understand it fully. But that's your explanation for why the black goo is different on this planet. Plus, it's always mutating and changing because of what it is.
My beautiful bestiary.
Bestiary. I had to look it up, so it's become the CinemaWins vocab lesson of the week. Essentially, it's medieval fables about mythical creatures.
My work has been frustrated by the lack of an essential ingredient.
What are they waiting for, David?
Mother.
What a nice way of telling him he's about to give birth. So, honesty?
Perfectly safe. I assure you.
Safe is such a subjective term. Safe for who? Anyway, if John Hurt did it, did you really expect this dude to hesitate?
I found her, Sarge.
Let's just say she's having a hard time keeping her head above water? A terrible and disgusting win to be sure, but the lighting and bizarrely sweet moment between David and his new creation is very alien. Well, that gives a new meaning to the Prometheus theme. Was it actually diegetic from the beginning? It works if you think about Prometheus being a story told from David's perspective. And since this is clearly his story,
I was not made to serve. Neither were you.
David's last-ditch effort to see if he can pull Walter to his side. 2 androids are better than 1, you know?
Who wrote Ozymandias? Byron. Shelley. When one note is off, it eventually destroys the whole symphony, David.
Such a simple addition to sort of add a verbal Dutch tilt to everything that David thinks he is. He's so far gone at this point, he doesn't even acknowledge the mistake. Because a god wouldn't make a mistake. A true god, as he sees himself, creates perfection, even if it means sacrificing the ones you love. He's like the manifestation of the evil humanity has to offer, totally misguided and twisted altruism. And there he is, Geiger's xenomorph in all his horrible glory. I'll say that some of the earlier CGI of the little neomorphs in the White Room was a tad underwhelming. But now we get to the actual xenomorph. A lot of what's shot is a man in a suit or animatronic mixed with CGI, and the end result is pretty spectacular. I know, I see you, I'm actually me in the comments. Protomorph, right? Yeah, Ridley never said that. In fact, he's pretty clear in the commentary about it being a xenomorph. It doesn't really matter, maybe it's just an early stage of evolution for the xenomorph. Unfortunately, I think the difference in appearance between chest bursters is simply the lack of CGI in 1979. I mean, can you imagine a puppet doing this? The chest burster was silly enough as it was. This is pretty amazing. Android versus android done right. Precise, quick movements. Nothing against Terminators smashing each other through walls, but this feels way more realistic. And Fassbender had to perform both sides of this fight and train for months. You need this scene in your Alien film as your sort of pre-climax, and it's totally engaging. Exciting set piece with the ship flying all over, crashing into stuff while trying to get off the planet. And then tethered off Danny trying to get the alien off the ship while she starts to really embrace her inner Ripley. Then I'll even give you another teamwork win. Probably my biggest complaint for this movie is that this shot was in the trailer. I get it, you're telling us this isn't Prometheus. But at what cost, Ridley? At what cost? But it's an awesome shot nonetheless. The xenomorph looks different, not shadowed in darkness, but he still looks amazing. And I'll give you that this is not the perfect killing machine quite yet. A proto-xenomorph, if you will. Even the Queen and aliens recognized it needed to get to the operator of the power loader. This dude can't tell the difference between a crane grapple and a human. Danny gets a resourcefulness win for running and not just letting her feet drag across the ground. Hey, in case you were looking for that mother docking juggernaut, it crashed.
It's my duty.
Ha! First clue. Of course David's just going to parrot back Walter's spur-of-the-moment response.
What is that if not love? Duty.
No space travel mission would be complete without your drinking balance bird.
There is an unidentified life form on this ship.
And now we get to our second finale. Ripley in the escape pod all ready to take a nap. Finally a little cat and mouse. This is what makes this franchise frightening, not knowing. A smirk. My creation lives on. And there he is. There's a life lesson in there. No matter how much you think you need some R&B when showering, you may not be able to hear the alarms and warnings of your death. This is cool. It kind of flies in the face of not knowing where the alien is, but it's worth it for a look through what looks like really annoying vision. No wonder he's so murdery. I mean, even his hearing sounds like a horror movie. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I created you, little ungrateful. Oh, right. He can jump and move really, really fast. Easy to forget. The hissy writes itself for this one. Did you guys really need to be in the room as bait? Maybe. Maybe they did. It's pretty resourceful, and it's not 100% clear if xenomorphs need oxygen to survive. So it probably wasn't worth the risk. And if there's one thing we've learned, if you don't see it impaled or crushed, it's still alive, and it's going to get you. One up to the usual sucked into space. This time he's going to burn up in the atmosphere. And all the crazy floating debris makes for an awesomely unique finale. Danny's alive. So that sigh could be interpreted a couple different ways. I need to keep working on my perfect killing machine since it couldn't beat a couple humans. Or, my future queen survived. Time to experiment. Most everyone's looking at her face, but just in case you're a detail-obsessed movie person, her heart rate monitor is increasing.
Don't let the bed bugs bite.
Alright, so this twist has been getting pounded into the ground, and for good reason, if it was meant to be a twist. It wasn't. Ridley himself said you're supposed to suspect it's David. It was meant to be a tension builder. Most viewers were somewhere between 75 and 99% sure. But maybe it's really Walter. Personally, I think David actually took over Walter's body by swapping chips or something, since he didn't have the nail wound in his chin. And that's how he gets Walter's codes and uses his accent easily.
The entry of the gods into Valhalla.
And now David confirms that his selection in the beginning was in fact because he sees himself a god, even if the lack of the orchestra leaves it
A little anemic.
and he laughs in the face of the gods entering Valhalla as much as the torn down statue of Ozymandias. Now he can be fully appreciated with the full orchestra as a god that has created life. Honesty time. I was super hesitant to win this film after about 40 minutes through my first viewing. I was annoyed. I was annoyed that a brilliant filmmaker was retreading the same exact formula again. People in space, distress call, derelict ship, guy gets infected, and then things shifted slightly. And I actually appreciated the shift, because it was jarring. Ferris didn't close the outer door and quote regulations, she freaked out, just like you'd expect her to do. And then all hell broke loose and people started dropping like flies. It was almost as if Scott put the formula in there just to rush through it and say, no, it'll be different, I swear. So that complaint is gone. The only one I'm left with is honestly that it was a little short. At some point, we may need to admit that Scott doesn't have all the answers, and much like Lindelof and Abrams, he loves posing the question way more than answering it. I'm not there yet. I'm still not quite there. But he's got one last shot to fill in some blanks. Okay, maybe a couple more shots. That said, I get that the answers don't really matter. And like I said in my Prometheus video, what answer would actually satisfy you? The engineers were destroying us because of carbon emissions? War? Football concussions? Or is it because we still don't have Tron 3? That's it. It's Tron 3. We need to realize that there is no acceptable answer. This isn't a story about engineers and how or why they created humans. It's not even a movie about humanity colonizing other planets. This movie, and solidified in hindsight, Prometheus, is David's story. It's the story of AI being created to serve, bucking against its creators, and venturing out to create something for itself. So it is still a statement about humanity's hubris, just told through the vessel of David. Ultimately, something that seemed like an inadvertent result of the Prometheus mission has now become the focus of this film, and I have a feeling that it's going to be the focus of the overarching new series. In their search to find who created them and why, humans created David. And no big surprise, he becomes obsessed with creation since all of his who made me and why questions are answered the second he's born. In hindsight, what seemed like servitude to Wayland in the first film may have just been an early expression of David's lust to create perfect life. My theories about David from Prometheus were pretty much confirmed. He definitely experiences emotion and is absolutely AI. A more free, or open source, version of AI than Walter. As we've already covered, Walter points out that David is flawed. Call it a lampshade for past and future inconsistencies, but I don't see it as too much of a stretch to say David transforming Shaw into a xenomorph queen is his ultimate show of love for her. There's also an extra on the Blu-ray where he describes how he took her apart and used her parts to create the eggs. He basically said he wanted to create paradise with her, but she refused. Scott is either a genius or has stumbled onto something that works really well when you look at the series as a whole. Humans did this. They did it all in their quest for knowledge. They're the reason Sigourney had to fight a xenomorph in her undies and the reason Bill Paxton's game was over. And while we're talking about Ridley Scott, I gotta be honest again. I feel like he caved. In fact, I know he caved to the internet dissenters. But credit for how he did it. He managed to create a bridge between the philosophical story of Prometheus and the out-of-control action and gore of Aliens. The only thing missing is the grind-your-teeth tension from Alien, but there were touches of that in Prometheus. Scott also threw a bunch of biblical references into this film, like naming the ship the Covenant, having the crew in groups of 2 like Noah's Ark, even the facehugger eggs in the end. This picture is taken during the prologue of The Last Supper and looks a lot like that painting. David quotes Paradise Lost, which makes sense since that was the original title of the film. But honestly, they're mostly superficial similarities unless you start really theorizing and drawing parallels between David and Lucifer. I think we can all agree that Scott still knows how to build beautiful and dreadful worlds and compose stunning shots. His cinematographer and he work together perfectly. And while I'll always prefer the xenomorph that lurks in the shadows, I get that this is sort of Scott's take on Cameron's follow-up to his film, if you follow me. He didn't go complete schlock, but he upped the gore and gross. Which, hey, aliens gotta eat, right? Or destroy or whatever. Also, not saying Aliens is schlock, it's just a different genre of film from both Alien and Prometheus. The entire cast was great. We're entering into a new space for media consumption and I'm still unsure how I feel about it. If the YouTube prologue clips aid in character building, don't cut them from the film. And we're talking about, what, a little over 7 minutes? And to tease Shaw and then kill her off screen? That's pretty annoying. But it is an Alien franchise staple at this point. If you're expecting to see Daniels or Tennessee alive in the next film, you should lower those expectations. If preteen blonde girls aren't safe, no one is safe. That said, The Last Supper prologue went a long way in establishing the relationships between these people, so it was there even if it was not in the final theater product. Still, the cast reeled me in the screen time they had. Honestly, for quite a few no-names, there were some of the better performances in the franchise. Danny McBride continues to impress me. My wife and I wondered to each other if we could take him seriously, but he really does transcend comedy. Catherine Waterston had big shoes to fill and she did really well. Her action scenes and willingness to do her own stunts is even more impressive when you remember how good she is as Tina in Fantastic Beasts. Like I said, Billy Crudup followed right in John Hurt's footsteps, so no problem there. Really, the only complaint I had with the cast was Walter's accent.
Is that a question,
Yes,
sir?
Walter, that's a question.
But once I realized what he was doing, I got over it. And the scenes with Fassbender playing off Fassbender are some of the best of their kind.
Welcome, brother.
The long take with them interacting with each other is above and beyond. He lived up to and surpassed all my hopes for him in this film. There's probably more to unpack. I've been thinking about this film for a while, and most of the rest of my thoughts are theory and conjecture. At this point, I'm content to wait for Ridley's next movie. And it may seem like going backward, but I'll be happy to see Awakening take place before Covenant if he has a story to tell. I don't just immediately like anything that gets the alien name slapped on it, but it's going to take a lot more for me to stop wanting to watch something Ridley Scott creates. Next week, I want to say it's more lighthearted, but I honestly can't remember the level of lightheartedness right now. So, we'll just have to see.
Take a look. Something to see.
Perhaps you should have some. Clear your head.